coming up on the Making Waves VO podcast.
I think it's important to feel the joy of getting the basket, getting the gig, and letting that sustain you. And if it's too far between, if there are more failures than hits, that's a daunting thing. You start saying, why am I doing this? What am I in this for? Maybe I'm not cut out to do this.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves. Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves. Making waves.
This is the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
It's the Making Waves VO podcast. Yes, indeed. Presented by our friends at Full Compass, fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
Bobby, how have you been this last week? You been busy?
Not as busy as the previous weeks. I do have to tell you real quick that I had a hearing test today. You know how we both... I knew they were going to do that. You know how we both came from radio and we would have our headphones and the speakers just blasting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got this new insurance and they give you one free hearing test a year. And I was like, why not? I'd love to know how my hearing is. And the first thing they do, have you ever had a hearing test?
I have, yeah, multiple times.
You know those really, really cool booths they put you in that sound so much better than what we're both in now?
I do. I'm envious of those things.
Yeah, I know. So they put me in there and she goes, well, you have to come in this little booth, It's going to be really, really quiet. And I went, I'm in these things all day long. And she goes, really? And as soon as she found out what I did for a living, she was like, but I passed with flying colors.
Yeah, I remember being in one of those several years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago, whenever it was. And my doctor was considering selling it. And I'm like, hey, how much you want? And it was like, I don't know, 10 or 20 grand at the time that he wanted for it. And I'm like, I'm not going to budget that much for that. But I ended up budgeting almost that much for that. Anyway, when I got my forever booth. But that's what we do as voice actors. We go through these things and I am totally envious of the hearing thing because those things are built like tanks and they're so quiet.
Yeah. I could hear my heartbeat in the little headphones. That's how quiet it was.
But could you hear the highest tones?
I only, on my left ear, I missed like 2 of them. But everything else, I got really good scores on.
Excellent. Well, Bobby, we're not going to keep our guests waiting any longer. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. We want to get into our heads. We've always talked about getting in our heads, but what about an actual expert that would be the perfect guest to get inside our heads? Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about voice actor and neuropsychologist, Dr. Jerry Schultz. But for today, we're going to call him Jerry. Hey, Jerry, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing fine, guys.
Thanks for joining us on the Making Waves VO podcast. The first thing is, yes, you are, in fact, a neuropsychologist. You did that for a while, and then you went into voiceover. How did that come about?
Well, the two kind of overlapped, but I'm kind of a semi-retired neuropsychologist, so I still do webinars and an occasional consultation. I just got back from Indiana doing a live presentation, the first one in 5 years, and it's nice to be in front of a live audience, let me tell you. The voice acting started about, should I go way back?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when I was about 14 years old, my father acquired an Army-Navy surplus store in Dayton, Ohio. And in the corner, there was a DJ from WING radio who was advertising our goods at the store and then spinning tunes in between. So I was hanging around and he was there every Saturday. And I was this fat little kid who was busy, as my brother who took over the business said, straightening the knife case because that was cool. So this guy said, Jerry, you want to do the ads? And I said, well, yeah, sure. So I was one of the middle of 5 kids. I had to make myself known in different ways. And he put me on the microphone when I was 14 years old. And I did things on that mic back in those days that would have thrown me in politically incorrect prison pretty quick. He said, for example, we got some rifles in there. There were guns in the store and all kinds of stuff. It was the coolest place to work. And he said, why don't you do the German guns thing? And I said, Okay, today we have German Mausers. They are very fine rifle. We don't have the bullets, but they're coming in. So get the gun and then come later for the bullets.
As a 14-year-old, you thought to do that. That's funny.
Well, I was a little younger, but all my friends or my buddies or the guys I wanted to be my buddies said, "How did you do that? That is so cool!" And so I became famous. And nobody knows if you're a fat kid behind a microphone.
Right. Oh,
and that's where the
gosh.
inspiration started. That's cool.
That was the beginning. And then I've used my voice as professionally to do webinars and training and college teaching in a variety of places. And in my private practice, I've worked almost exclusively with kids with special needs. And I'm a father and a grandfather, and I'm a storyteller. So I use stories in my therapy. I've told stories to my kids. My girls, when they were younger, used to say, "Tell us a story from your head," which was really cool because I just made stuff up. And that's what got me famous in my family. But I was a liar and made good at it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, as soon as you said Dayton, I grew up in Westchester, Ohio, which is, north of Cincinnati. And when you said WING, I knew exactly what you were talking about. I worked at TUE, the rock station in Dayton.
Well, there was a WING contest at the swimming pool. If you put masking tape on your back in the call letters of WING and you got a sunburn, you peeled them off and became free advertising for them. And I was like a widescreen kid, so I don't think I won, but yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Hang around. We'll be back shortly.
Hello, this is Tom Pinto, voice actor and coach. And whenever I'm done listening to myself, I listen to Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell, the hosts with the most.
Oh, Bobby, I remember getting into voiceover, and one of the most exciting parts about getting into voiceover is buying all the gear. You don't realize that until you become a voice actor and you got to produce your own stuff. And you go, ooh, this part should be fun. But then you go, I have not a clue on what I'm supposed to buy.
Exactly.
That's why you trust your good friends at Full Compass, fullcompass.com. They know VO there, and you're going to have a great selection of pro audio gear, and you're going to get a lot of good help. And there's a lot of good attributes that go along with buying from Full Compass.
Yeah, so if you're not really sure when you got the piece of equipment and you have questions about it, they have a free 2-year service or repair plan. They have free shipping on orders over $49. I love that. I think my favorite thing is the low price guarantee, because you just never know. You said a second ago that you're getting into this and you don't know what you need, but how about, do you know if you're paying the right price for it? So you don't have to worry about that when you shop at fullcompass.com. They'll guarantee to match the price on the products they sell for new, identical, and immediately available products offered at a lower price.
They have flexible financing, Bobby, and they also have free expert assistance, and that's why we say we know VO at Full Compass.
Everything from microphones to interfaces to headphones to mic booms, they've got it.
If you have any questions and you're more old school and you want to call them on the phone, you can call Full Compass at 800-356-5844. Full Compass and fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
And now, back to Making Waves.
Tell us a little bit about this, your degree and how it works with your voiceover experience. And do you, can we just ask you some questions about the psyche of voiceover?
Sure.
Okay.
I started out my professional career as a special education teacher, and then morphed into what I am today, a clinical neuropsychologist, by going to a couple graduate programs and learning about the science of what happens in the brain and how to measure it. And so I've spent my career professionally, when I'm out of the booth, doing neuropsych evaluations of kids, interpreting the results to them, and then seeing some of them in therapy, seeing some of their families in therapy. But that's really been the bulk of my work. I love kids. I love working with kids. I love watching them grow and learn. And storytelling is a part of the therapy approach that I use with the kids, like getting their story and getting them to tell their story. So, yeah, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
We had a couple of guests on in the past month or so And that got really brutally honest. I mean, just bearing their souls on how they feel about not getting work or being, just being stressed out and having to take a break. And we all go through that as voice actors, the being turned down for jobs, multiple jobs daily. How does that weigh on us?
Well, I think it depends on kind of what we're made of. I think the healthiest kids and the healthiest adults are the kind of people who can handle losing as well as they can handle winning. If you talk to any famous athlete or professional, they'll tell you, if they're honest, that they failed many more times than they've been successful. So I think you've got to be able to take failure and not take it personally. It's interesting in voice acting, I never know, and you probably never know what your competition is like. But, I've done in the past, I think I've been doing this pretty much full time for 12 years or 14 years. And I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of interviews. You know how that goes, or auditions rather. And I consider it rehearsal. Everyone I do gives me a chance to meet people and to learn things about myself, but also to hone my craft. But you've got to have a tough skin. It's hard when you keep getting. I've just done, and I think just finished my 100th voice project, and I do this.
Nice.
I've done this part-time, not full-time, and I do it mostly for fun. But I look back over my audition, and I keep all my reels. So I've done probably 3,000 auditions over the past 10 years. And I don't know how that compares to other people, but that's a lot of practicing.
Yeah.
So, the hit rate is not very high for me or for most of us. But when you get a good gig, it's just, for me, it's a drug.
Yeah.
My
It's
wife
a
says,
big
"What are
hit."
you doing down there in your closet?" I said, "You know what I'm doing."
Celebrating. Well, you talk about the thousands of auditions that you're doing, and we're all doing this. We got to go, different characters. We got to do different reads, different tones, and we've got to do that regularly. Does that affect our brain long term? Or can it create emotional fatigue doing all those acrobatics?
I would say the greatest risk is for our voices, the tool, the instrument we have. We have to protect that. So sometimes doing voices, I'm more worried about kind of what happens when you're in here doing a voice like this, and you're doing that for a couple hours for a show. But I think psychologically, one of the ways to stave off memory problems and age is to keep yourself busy and to do a variety of things. And for me, the voice acting world, once I get in this booth, I can be anybody I want, anybody wants me to be. I'm kind of a chameleon of voices. I think it's just brain stimulation. I think if you are hard on yourself and you get a rejection or many rejections and you start feeling bad, I think that's dangerous. It's not the voice acting itself that does that, but it's your attitude about it. So
Okay.
I don't think it's harm. I think for some people it could be harmful, but you have to have a little bit of a thick skin to do this work.
So what about imposter syndrome? What brings that? So many of us do it. I mean, you have a high one week, and then the next week you're just really doubting yourself. What brings on imposter syndrome for anybody in this business or just acting in general?
That's a really good question. You have to be an imposter to be able to do this work. So in our line of work, that's not a liability. Imposter syndrome, I understand more about that from a neuropsychological perspective. I've advanced degrees. I work with some pretty high-level people at some pretty high-level schools, and sometimes I sit around a meeting and I look around and I say, well, how did I get here? How did I deserve to be here? Why am I the guy that people are turning to and asking for professional advice? And so for me, imposter syndrome is hit me up more on that side of it. When I'm in the booth, though, man, I can just be any person I want to be. And if it doesn't sound right, if it's not the right character, I go into the next one or change my voice and be another kind of imposter. So it's great for a guy who likes to lie to get attention.
Well, obviously, you've been confident for a long time if you were doing your accents at 14 years old.
Yeah, I had to do that. And in high school, I played music a lot. I was in dance band, pep band, marching band, and became the student director of the high school band. So I craved attention, and I found healthy and positive ways to get it because, as I said, I was one of 5 kids, and you had to make yourself known. So yeah, I'm a pretty well-adjusted guy. So maybe I'm not the right guy to ask about imposter syndrome because it doesn't bother me. But for all you out there in Radio Land, if you're feeling this, I would say, I don't know, I can't say it as a psychologist. I want to say get over it, but I mean, but you're not paying me, so I can't say it. Anyway.
That's so funny. But do we're talking with a neuropsychologist / voice actor, and, you don't get the imposter syndrome at all, but do you ever get disappointed in auditions that you don't book?
Absolutely. Sure.
And what's happening in the brain at that point?
I may audition for a role, and I'm on a camera in my studio talking to people, and they're nodding and smiling, and I'm saying, well, I got this one. I nailed this one. This is good. They really love me. And then you get an email a day later and saying, well, we did a really great job, but we've decided to go in another direction. And I said,
classic in another direction.
Okay. So, I mean, if I didn't get some hits at the right frequency, it's like being in Vegas. You put money in the slot machine. If you don't get anything back from it, you either keep putting money until you go broke or you walk away. So for me, voice acting, there have been enough hits and enough highs from this that have really kept me going from gig to gig. And so that's how I thrive in that environment.
That's a great analogy. When you think about it, it really is. So what have some of your favorite projects been that you've booked?
I would have to say my most favorite is doing the role of Long John Silver in Treasure Island, one of my early roles, because I loved the book when I was a kid, and to be able to play that character and go back in time and recreate a famous story through storytelling and characterizations was really a highlight. I think my second one was being the shrunken head of wisdom in a program called Tales of the Wicked West, which is a creative podcast that some guys put together, and they find this box, and in this box is a shrunken head, and I am the guy. And they open the box for wise counsel, and only one of the guys in the tour, he's related to me in some way, and he's the only one who can hear my voice. So I'm speaking through him. So that's kind of a cool role. I think another one that I really like doing is a show called The Divided States, put on by Kaiser Cat Cinema, a guy in Belgium named Vincent Denil. Writes this alt history, he keeps cranking them out. I don't know where they come from. And he takes you back in time, and it's kind of a what-if show, what if so-and-so would have won the war, and what if so-and-so would have lived and not died, and that kind of thing. And I've done multiple characters in that. That's a lot of fun, just because it's so creative and fun.
Hey, y'all, this is Tim Heller.
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 What a strange young man.
Who's Tim Heller? And you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin and Bobby. And all the other voices you just heard.
That's some of the most satisfying and rewarding things that, where you get to have fun and you're all in, you're invested. But we do have those opportunities like you were just talking about where we don't get those auditions. And that brings to mind something that we do often, and we compare our booking ratio to the number of auditions. So we look at, I booked, 1 out of 100 or whatever that might be. Are we setting ourselves up for a psychological trap, I guess, if we are, going on those kinds of numbers? Or how should we, rationalize something like that, our booking ratio?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, if you're a basketball player, for example, and you're taking I don't know, I'm using a sports analogy. I'm asportic. I don't have any idea what I'm talking. That's a psychological term I made up. At any rate, if you're shooting baskets and you just focus on the ones you miss, you won't hit very many. So I think you should. I think it's important to feel the joy of getting the basket, getting the gig, and letting that sustain you. And if it's too far between, if there are more failures than hits, that's a daunting thing. You start saying, why am I doing this? What am I in this for? Maybe I'm not cut out to do this. And I think it's also important to think about what your competition is. And if you're up against 40 people or 400 people or 4,000 people who are applying, because everybody who's got a closet and a microphone thinks they can be a voice actor, then the numbers they're not as meaningful. I did a gig yesterday with some students from NYU, and I said, "How did you pick me?" I said, "Of all the people," they said, "Well, we got 700 applicants, and your voice just seemed perfect for the role. So you rose to the top." And that happens once in a while. Mostly it doesn't happen, but I just think if you define your self-worth on the number of hits you make, it may not be enough hits for you. If you define your self-worth on the negative side for the number of based on the number of rejections you get, that's devastating. Who would want to keep doing that kind of job? So I think it's important to have another career or a hobby or something, because you got to get your needs met. You look for the hits in all kinds of places. If it's just on the microphone, just in the booth, it may not be enough hits to get your ka-ching going.
I think you're right. A lot of voice talent do have side jobs, or they have full-time jobs, and this one's their part-time job. Like myself, I decided to do an on-camera audition a couple months ago. It was a political commercial, and I haven't been on camera in ages. Did some, earlier in my career. And I booked it, and it just gives you that confidence, One guy that we know in voiceover is, and I think there's a couple women I know too that are doing user-generated content now for social media like TikTok and stuff, where they're selling products. And if you're good, you can make money in that. It doesn't always have to be you in the booth where you really get in your head. It's kind of building yourself all together, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I think diversification is good. And in this day and age, we've got options like the user-generated content and doing on-camera work. For me, that would be devastating. I mean, I've been in a couple plays and done some live kinds of things, but I despise learning lines because I just get anxious. I shut down, and I said, why would I do that again? I've got a family. Everybody's in community theater, and they're rehearsing lines and memorizing things. And I'm saying, that's good. I'll pull the curtain. I'll put the chair on the stage. I don't want to be out there. I want a script in front of me. If I want to ad lib, that's as far as I'm going to go. But I don't have to memorize the whole script.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll tell you, as a neuropsychologist, I understand a little bit about brain functioning. And I have learned I talk a lot about stress in kids and the impact of stress on learning and behavior and emotions. And I've learned that it takes the human brain many more exposures to success to keep you going than it does failure. In other words, if you take, I think there is some research that looks at high jumpers, and they show videotapes. They watch videotapes of themselves doing high jumping, and they wire their brains up to a scanning device. And when they see themselves failing, the brain lights up in one way. If they see themselves being successful, the brain lights up in another way. Your happy parts activate, and it takes 3 successful experiences to eradicate one negative experience in professional athletes.
Wow.
So you think about that hit rate. You want to hit a few times, but don't expect to hit every time. But
There's a lot of things that can get in our heads. Dr. Jerry Schultz, but we're just calling him Jerry right now. He is a neuropsychologist, and we're asking him all these important questions, like the stuff that messes with us the most, that gets in our head the most. Could it be auditions, live direction, performance, tech? What aspect of voiceover do you think gets in our head?
Well, I think if you go into the booth and you got a script before you, and you have an idea about how you think it should sound. And then you've got a director, sometimes a young director, a new filmmaker on the other side of the camera. And he said, well, that's not exactly what I had in mind for this. You know, we listened to your audition reel and that sounded pretty good, but what you're doing right now is you're not quite there yet. So for me, that would get in my head, and it would create some stress. So one of the things that I preach a lot to kids and adults and teachers and people working with kids with special needs is that try to use the stress as the fuel for success. So take a deep breath. Don't let it get to you. Listen to what the other person is saying and try to do that. Try to follow the notes that they're giving you. I spent a lot of time in the booth, and I think when I'm off, when I'm not really working well, is when I'm thinking about what I've done wrong and then in my head trying to correct it instead of just kind of blinking my eyes, taking a breath, getting into the head of the character that I'm voicing, and then be that person and do that. And I find the truest, most creative voices come out of that space. They don't come out of the negative space because I'm nervous. I don't know what to say. What is he looking for? And your head is talking to you in ways you want to say, shut up and do the lines.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Wow. I want to combine all the pieces of what is in your life, the teaching and the psychology and the voiceover. A lot of voice talent have their kids going into this business because they have the booth right there. There's a lot of opportunities for kids in voiceover, in all genres of voiceover. But then you look at Hollywood and young kids, the percentage who really couldn't deal with it and turned out, got out of acting or, got into drugs or just failed in their opinion. Are we doing our kids a disservice by trying to get them into this business, do you think?
Great question. And there is some collateral damage there. And I think about that because if you choose acting as a career, if it's really the thing you want to do, if you're really good at it and you're one of the few that makes it and does well, then it's pretty good. But if you're one of the ones who's swimming upstream all the time, trying to land roles and be good at everything and have a lot of people watching you, it can really put a kid at risk. I think the most important thing is, my kids and my grandkids know what I do here and how I do it, and they're happy and they think it's cool and it's fun. And I've offered them the chance to come in a booth and try it, and they come in for 10 minutes and try it and walk away, and they have their own careers. But I think they know that for me anyway, it's mostly fun. When it becomes work, I worked all my life at other kinds of things, so I can have fun in here and do what I'm doing. But I think if they chose it, if they said, hey, Grandpa Jerry's having a lot of fun in here, I want to do that, and they don't have the skill or the talent or they think they do and they get into something and they're not strong enough to handle the rejection that comes with it. And I think it's dangerous. It's a dangerous business. It's unsafe. I think kids should be encouraged to find their strength, whatever it is. If it happens to be voice work or acting, and they're good at it, and they try it out in different places, like school plays and community theater, and then doing voice acting bits as just part of a little piece of a gig. And they get the bug, and it's good for them, and they feel good about it, and they can handle the frustration and the experience of failure. If they can't do that, then I'd rather have them look into something else that gives them more joy.
Yeah, because we all know when a kid shuts down, they shut down. There's no way you're going to get it. So just one more time, Yeah, they're out of there.
I should tell you, you guys don't know this about me, but I'm also a jewelry maker, a silversmith. I make large welded sculptures. And you think, oh, my goodness, how does he do all that? I have a philosophy about life is you try everything twice. The first time it could be a bad chef, a bad piece of meat, a bad experience. But I keep trying things. And I got into jewelry making. I've always liked to work with my hands, and I spent years working with my head and my mouth. And my wife sent me to welding camp one summer in the Berkshires, and I came back. I went there with a couple pieces of rusty metal in my trunk, and I got taught the art of welding. And I came back with the beginning of my first sculpture, and I drove back home and I had tears in my eyes. I said, "Where have you been? Why have you
Oh.
neglected this part of you?" So for the past 10 years, I've taken many, many, many courses, classes in jewelry making and silversmithing, and I have pieces in a gallery. I'm doing a show on December 7th, and you talk about imposter syndrome. That hit me hard there. It took me a long time because I didn't grow up as an artist, and it took me a long time to really get in my head that, why can you do this? You can't call yourself an artist, and now I do. And it's
Good.
taken me eight to 10 years, but to be able to earn that label because I've gotten good feedback about that part of it. But also there's balance in my life that I encourage a lot of people who are in the booth to have. You got to have something else that feeds you. If you eat the one kind of food all the time and it tastes bad, you stop eating, and that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Making Waves VO podcast will be right back.
This is Tracy Thibodeau, and you've got the best VO podcast in all the land right here. The Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin and Bobby. Enjoy.
As a voice actor, you want to focus on what's important, right? Like pulling off the perfect read. You don't want to stress about tech stuff. That's why Full Compass is in your corner. With 50 years experience in pro audio, Full Compass has everything we voice actors need. Mics, headphones, monitors, mixers, interfaces, DAWs, all the goodies. And their certified product experts help with everything they sell. Plus, you can get free same-day shipping, flexible financing, and a low price guarantee. See it all at fullcompass.com. Fullcompass.com. They know VO.
And now back to Making Waves.
What part of VO success has nothing to do with talent and everything to do with psychology?
How much chutzpah you have.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Really, you have to believe that you're as good as you think you are, and then you hope a couple of them agree with you.
But we're just the opposite so many times. There's that dynamic too. We've got these gregarious personalities, via a microphone, but sometimes socially we're awkward.
Yeah. Well, that's the really interesting point. And you guys were talking at the beginning about hearing aids and hearing loss. I wear 2 hearing aids, and if I walk out of this booth, and I don't wear my hearing aids under the cans because it echoes and it gives me all kinds of distortion. But as my hearing has gotten worse, I go to a party, and I used to be more gregarious. Now I tend to hang back and watch and use my eyes more than my ears because
And
it's
judge.
confusing sometimes,
That's funny. They did that test today where they have the conversation behind the person who's talking to you. And it's like, that's where I'm bad. You can't hear, so you pretend like you're hearing and you're just nodding, and it's just not a good situation.
Yeah, and you say stupid things, they may fit somebody's question, but not that one. Yeah. So I don't know where we're going with that, but I think that's important. You said, if you're in the booth, you're an extrovert and you're doing this kind of stuff, and you step out of the booth and you go to a party or a social event and you hang back and you're quiet.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because one of the things that allows us to hone our craft as voice actors is that we are able to look and observe and watch people, what they do. And I don't know about you guys. I imagine you're like most good voice actors. You're physical in the booth. You act things out. You move. If you're an animal, you act like the animal. If you're a person with a long beard or something, you do that too. So I think watching people and observing human interactions you don't have to be out there all the time, but you can take in information through your eyes. And then in the booth, you can say, I've seen people get whatever it is, angry at each other or jealous. I know what that looks like. And if you feel that in the booth, if you turn that observation into physical activity, you become a better voice actor. That's all I think.
Oh, that is gold right there. Because some of the best coaches will tell you when you put yourself into the character, it's either how you feel about it or how somebody else feels about it, and you're just kind of relaying it. So when you choose your character, it could be somebody that you have been watching a lot, and you just, you're using them to speak through yourself on the character. That's a really good information there.
Jerry, did you have a nightmare session story that you might want to share with us? It's okay if you don't have one, but it could have been a recording session that maybe couldn't have gone much worse.
Nightmare Sessions.
That's a good one to think about. And I think the things that are nightmarish for me is I've got a young dog who likes to lay outside my studio while I'm recording. So if the doorbell rings, he barks or howls. And so often I'm doing retakes because my cute dog is not being cute at that moment. That's one thing. The other nightmare story is somebody says, why don't you have it be rolling on your end? And their end doesn't catch it and my end's not on. And I thought it was on and I'm looking down, there's nothing recording there. So we've been in the booth for an hour and there's nothing there. So that's a bit of a nightmare. You can always go back and do it again, but that part is not very good.
Yeah. Ended up being a great rehearsal.
We've never done that, Kev.
Yeah, we've all been there. So very, very cool. Well, thanks so much for being on with us, Jerry Schultz, neuropsychologist and voice actor. Thanks so much for being on the Making Waves VO podcast today.
Guys, it was a treat to be on. When you invited me, I said, this is a really great idea because there are a lot of people out there who need to have role models. We spend a lot of time in little booths and closets, as Bobby pointed out, the hearing booths all the time. So it's nice to get out there in this way and share your feelings with other people and give encouragement and hope. And you guys have put together a nice show, and I think it's a really important addition to the voice acting field.
Well, thank you. If somebody does want to get a hold of you to hire you for voiceover, do you have an email you can share, Jerry?
Yeah. Or you can go to my website, which is jerryschultzvoiceactor.com, or email me at jerryschultzvoiceactor@gmail.com. And I also have an IMDb page, which is Jerry Schultz, Roman numeral 7. You can hear some samples of my work there. So I really appreciate you giving me the chance to share that information. I do hope people give me a call. We'll chat.
Absolutely. Okay. This has been great. This has been very eye-opening, and it's also been reassuring, too. So, it's good to hear from the professional side, how we get in our heads and all that kind of stuff. Much success moving forward. Jerry Schultz, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Jerry. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bobby, we are always in our heads. And it was so good to get the perspective from somebody that's in people's heads, for a living, in a way.
Yeah.
Some nice takeaways from that.
And you can tell that he's good at what he does because he's a storyteller too. When he was relaying us, I always say that when we have guests on. See, you're a great storyteller. You could just talk and talk and talk and talk, and that's the way Jerry was. He was just like, and you could tell he really enjoyed telling those stories about him growing up and some of his experiences. So
yeah. One nugget that I want to recap, and it was like, talent put aside, what is the biggest thing psychologically we can do to have success in VO? And he was basically saying, be confident in what you do. Mm-hmm. Be confident in your work.
Yep.
Which I thought that was nice because that was nice, easy, good, clean takeaway on all the things. So, Bobby, good stuff today.
It was fun.
We will do it again very soon, maybe like a week. The Making Waves VO podcast is presented by Full Compass, fullcompass.com.
We know VO, said very confidently.
The Making Waves VO podcast is produced by K2 Media Productions with hosts Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. Sound design and editing by Jason Traver. Production assistance by Lacey Deline. Publicity and social media by Shannon Scott and Silas Phillips. Be sure to subscribe to the Making Waves VO podcast on your favorite platform. For all episodes, merchandise, gear, and more, visit makingwavesvo.com. Until next time, I'm AJ McKay. Keep making waves.